Switzerland must not conceal from itself the fact that the present is a time of crisis. In November 1797, the Bernese Schultheiss Niklaus Friedrich von Steiger wrote these words to the Baron of Thugut, the minister of the emperor in Vienna. Indeed, in the late 18th century, the Swiss Confederacy faced increasing tensions. Conservative political systems were clashing with new social, economic, and political dynamics. Dissatisfaction and revolutionary thought spread among the population, and unrest and uprisings increased in frequency. Furthermore, the external threat from a quickly expanding France occupied the governments, as well as constant disagreements within the Confederacy and the governments of the cantons themselves. In the middle of this period of crisis, a particular type of institution dominated the political stage as a crucial actor, the so-called secret councils. In this talk, I will examine the roles and activities of these councils during the period of 1789 to 1798, using the examples of cantons of Bern and Fribourg. These cantons are particularly interesting for two reasons. Firstly, for their geographical closeness to France, and secondly, for the quick spreading of revolutionary thought in the Waadt, a region which at the time belonged to Bern and at the same time shared a long border with Fribourg. I will structure the talk as follows. A short overview over secret councils in the early modern Swiss Confederacy is followed by three main parts. Here, I will portray the secret councils of Bern and Fribourg in the late 18th century. Then, I'll explain their perception and handling of the crisis. And finally, I'll focus on communication, where secret councils struggled to balance secret and public ways of communicating. The talk will be rounded off with a glimpse into the period after 1798. I'll begin with a short overview over secret councils in the early modern Swiss Confederacy. In many of the cantons, secret councils emerged as early as in the 16th and early 17th centuries. This map shows the old Swiss Confederacy. The Confederacy consisted of the cantons, which were independent states that understood themselves as sovereign republics. Thus, the cantons had their own governments and took their own political decisions. Affairs that concerned the Confederacy as a whole were discussed at the so-called Diet, to which the cantons could send their envoys. On the map, those cantons are highlighted that had a secret council at least during a certain period in the Ancien Régime. It is evident that this includes almost all cantons. There are very few exceptions, such as Zug, where a secret council was never established. The secret councils were typically small committees of around 10 members, which were selected among the most important government officials. Often, secret councils were committees of the small councils. We see this with the example of Bern, where all secret councillors were part of the small council, and all small councillors were again part of the great council. During the early modern period, secret councils engaged in a great variety of political affairs. Unlike in other places, secret councils in the old Swiss Confederacy were not merely advisory bodies. Rather, their responsibilities reached from domestic and everyday politics to diplomatic negotiations and crucial decision-making in war and foreign politics. Among all these fields of activity, handling unrest was a key responsibility. Secret councils were central actors during subject uprisings, unrest in the citizenry, and during the numerous times of confessional tension and conflict between the cantons. Secret councils were tasked with the handling of unrest for two main reasons. Firstly, secrecy was employed as an effective strategy to contain the spread of unrest. It helped to quickly erase the memory of events and prevent their repetition and imitation. Secondly, the secret council's well-informed nature and small size enabled them to act promptly and efficiently. Thus, it is not surprising that in many cantons, secret councils took center stage during the crisis of the late 18th century. This leads us to the main part of the talk, where I will investigate two of these secret councils, the ones of Bern and Fribourg. Not all cantons employed a secret council by the second half of the 18th century. One of these cases was actually the canton of Fribourg, where the secret council had been abolished and reduced to a war council in 1619. As the perception of crisis in Fribourg intensified in the government after the French Revolution, the re-establishment of a secret council was considered necessary. Rather than creating a new institution, the government decided to transform an already existing body. In 1790, the Great Council changed the former War Council back into a secret council. Thus, rather than an innovation, the establishment of the secret council in 1790 was a recourse to the practices of the 16th and early 17th centuries. The responsibilities of the secret council were similar to those of the former War Council. It was charged with matters of internal and external unrest, meaning that it investigated these cases in secret, handled incoming reports, conducted interrogations, made arrests, and reported to the other councils. Additionally, it had the authority to take certain military measures. In Bern, on the other hand, the secret council was not specifically established in the context of the crisis. Rather, it had existed continuously since the early 17th century. In the late 18th century, however, it underwent a few significant changes. In 1790, Bern's secret council was expanded. And to manage the increasing workload more efficiently, it began, at the same time, to split into smaller committees frequently. Meetings were held more frequently than before. From a few meetings per month in 1790, it increased to several meetings a week in 1797, and finally to meetings twice a day in December 1797. The extended responsibilities and increasingly frequent meetings resulted in a large amount of written material, as we can see on this slide. The meetings of the Secret Council between the 17th and the mid-18th century were recorded in only 2 volumes on a total of around 700 pages. These 2 volumes are the ones on your left. Between 1789 and 1798, however, the minutes of the Secret Council comprise as much as 12 volumes with around 400 pages each. Despite being subordinate to the Great and Small Councils, the Secret Council of Bern was able to act relatively independently. Very commonly, the Great Council passed on roughly defined tasks to the Secret Council, leaving it the freedom to proceed according to its own judgment. In complicated and sensitive matters, the Secret Councils sometimes explicitly asked the Great Council permission for autonomous action. In late 1797, for example, Bern corresponded with other cantons to coordinate a common legation to the Conference of Rastatt. The Secret Council presented its suggested way of action to the Great Council and, I cite, given the circumstances of the difficult affair and to save as much time as possible, requested permission to leave the handling of the affair to the Secret Council. In Fribourg, the Secret Council collaborated more closely with the Great and Small Councils. It reported to these other councils more frequently and rarely took decisions on its own, but rather executed immediate instructions, handled correspondence, and supplied the other councils with information. I am now coming to the third part of my talk. Looking back, we describe the period of the late 18th century as a time of crisis. But how did secret councils evaluate the situation at that time? And what corresponding actions did they consider appropriate? The establishment, or rather the structural changes in secret councils during the 1790s, reflect the awareness of the extraordinary nature of the situation. At the latest from 1797, the Secret Council of Bern even explicitly used the word crisis to describe the current political climate. Despite the perception of an unusual and crisis-prone situation, however, secret councils took surprisingly hesitant action. In December 1797, for example, the bailiff of Aigle, this is a town in the French-speaking part of the canton, warned the secret council of Bern about the imminent danger which threatens our fatherland. The secret council responded that, I cite, "It might be true that the Confederacy is facing a crisis, the likes of which it has perhaps never seen before. However, measures would need to be taken with utmost caution, as they might, if taken at the wrong time, bring distant dangers closer and could even cause an outbreak, which could have been avoided through caution and wisdom." A few days later, the secret council reprimanded the bailiff of Vevey for being worried about and trying to take measures against unrests among the population. The secret councillors judged his concerns rash and unnecessary, as the government has no reason to doubt the loyalty and devotion of its subjects. An effort by the bailiff of Frienisberg to strengthen the unity between authorities and subjects was met with great reservation too. The secret council expressed its doubts that such an undertaking could be carried out without any violations of the constitution and the common good. The strategies that both secret councils of Bern and Fribourg followed to fight the crisis revolved mostly around gathering information and observing the situation. The secret councils employed a network of informants, including officials, diplomats, and spies, to obtain information from their own territories as well as from abroad. Not uncommonly, informants were people that belonged to the personal and even family networks of the secret councillors. In Fribourg, secret councillors were even explicitly instructed to make use of these networks. But in some cases, especially when it came to denunciations, the informants came from among the subjects too. In 1790, for example, various people in the canton of Fribourg communicated suspicious leaflets and writings they had become aware of to the secret councillors. In order to gather information, interrogations were a tool too. Suspicious people, as well as witnesses, were cited before the secret council or a delegated committee and questioned on their activities, connections, and correspondence. In some cases, individuals were not cited before the council, but still labeled as suspicious and put under surveillance. Surveillance also included the monitoring of correspondence. The post offices of Bern and Fribourg were ordered repeatedly to intercept letters to and from certain addresses, as well as those that appeared suspicious in general. In all these actions, however, the secret councils made sure that they were carried out as secretly as possible and did not attract any attention. Finally, secret councils occasionally consulted journals or newspapers to stay informed about current events. In 1789, for example, the Bernese secret councils ordered that, in order to get secure information about the negotiations of the Assemblée nationale, the Journal de Paris is to be sent to the attention of the secret council. The gathered intelligence sometimes formed the basis for further action. Action focused mostly on censorship of subversive ideas. Many journals and newspapers were censored or outright banned. Book printers were closely monitored and forbidden to print certain writings. Especially dangerous books and pamphlets were burned. The secret councils tried to extend their efforts at censorship over the borders of their territories. They frequently informed other cantons of the writings they had put under censorship and requested them to take similar actions. If people became known for distributing ideas that were critical of the authorities, they were given a warning and in severe cases were expelled from the territories or put into prison. These measures were, however, usually taken on an individual level. Deviant individuals were punished, but little efforts were made to meet the general dissatisfaction of the population on a more systemic level. Only very rarely the Bernese Secret Council tried its hand at a form of communication that we might here call public relation measures maybe in the broadest sense. These efforts included mostly propagandistic measures, such as sermons in which instructed pastors called on the population to obey the authorities. Sometimes they also resulted in government-controlled publications, through which counter-revolutionary ideas were disseminated. In December 1797, the Secret Council of Berne decided, for example, to counter the arguments of long-term critic Frédéric César de la Harpe with a publication aimed at distributing government-friendly propaganda. In the later stages of the crisis, Berne escalated this strategy by instructing loyal citizens to strategically distribute information favorable to the government. The Secret Council was also heavily involved in the mission of Wolfgang Charles de Chinchin, who led a commission of inquiry in the Watt from December 1797 onwards. As a part of his assignment, the Secret Council instructed him to, I cite, counter the spreading rumors and to distribute the true attitude of the government towards the country. Secret councils were responsible for intelligence, surveillance, censorship, and propaganda. But most importantly, they were also centers of communication and coordination. According to the overarching theme of this conference, I will explore this aspect a bit more closely in this last part of my talk. In order to exchange information and coordinate measures, secret councils collaborated closely with each other. While networks between secret councils were already close in 1789, collaboration and exchange increased steadily towards the end of the century. In Bern, as well as in Fribourg, the primary focus of correspondence with other cantons in the early 1790s was, maybe apart from the continuous exchange of information, censorship, surveillance, and the fight against revolutionary ideas. The other cantons were, for example, warned about circulating writings, and sometimes the documents were circulated among the secret councils too. They would, for example, be confiscated in Fribourg, which sent them to Bern, from where they were forwarded to Lucerne and Solothurn, and finally sent back to Fribourg, where they were archived. In the second half of the decade, the focus of the secret council's correspondence shifted more towards diplomacy. They tried to coordinate diplomatic efforts among the cantons of the Confederacy, including the instruction of envoys to France, the correspondence with the French Directory, and the intervention at the Conference of Rastatt. Coordinated military measures also gained importance during this period. For the Secret Council of Fribourg, the Secret Council of Bern was the most frequent correspondence partner. Correspondence often revolved around issues in the Bernese territories of the Watt, a region where revolutionary ideas were found particularly fertile ground and which shared a long border with Fribourg. The Secret Council of Fribourg corresponded frequently with Lucerne and Solothurn too. The secret councils of Basel and Zurich, on the other hand, were addressed rarely. Correspondence with these cantons happened on a more formal level, only in specific matters, and was usually conducted by the Great Council rather than the Secret Council. For Bern, the most frequent correspondence partner was the Secret Council of Zurich, despite the differences in opinion concerning the French affairs between these two cantons. In the correspondence between the cantons, secrecy and confidentiality was of crucial importance. In almost each of their letters, the secret councils highlighted the significance of keeping the correspondence confidential. Secrecy, however, went beyond the limits of writing. In all their actions, secret councils were very concerned to act without drawing any attention or causing sensation. When a meeting was held between secret councils of different cantons, which happened several times in the 1790s, a great effort was made to keep the conference confidential. In November 1797, for example, the Secret Council of Bern invited the Secret Councils of Fribourg and Solothurn to a meeting. Bern instructed the secret councillors of the other cantons to arrive without any sensation or apparatus. Communication and action of secret councils was, rather unsurprisingly, dominated by secrecy. As we have seen, however, there were occasional attempts of some secret councils at stepping out of the arcane sphere and addressing the population in public statements. The Secret Council of Bern, for example, distributed counter-propaganda in sermons and written manifests. Addressing the population in this way may have been deemed necessary as the political situation was not stabilizing. It was, however, heavily controversial among early modern governments. As it had become evident already in earlier unrests, interaction and dialogue with the public was seen as a threat to the authority of the government. To engage in counter-propaganda and to publicly discuss political matters meant to publicly acknowledge the existence of troubles and deviant voices. Thereby, it was possibly weakening the position of the government. Furthermore, such action went against traditional and proven strategies of keeping unrests a secret and denying their existence by silencing them. Given these concerns, secret councils found it difficult to balance between secret and public in their strategies of communication. Accordingly, the appropriate mode of communication was often the subject of disagreement among secret councillors. While some were in favor of rather offensive strategies, which could include dialogue with the public, others preferred to deal with issues by passing over the matter in silence. I am now coming to a short conclusion and outlook. Secret councils were among the most important political institutions in the late 18th century Swiss Confederacy. Balancing between secret and public spheres, their example shows that political secrecy was of crucial importance, even in a time that has mostly been characterized by its emergence of public voices and demands for transparency. Even though at the end of the Ancien Régime in 1798, secret councils were eventually abolished, this was only temporary. Already in 1803, a so-called Council of State was established in Berne, which was very similar to the former secret council in its size and responsibilities. In the period of restoration from 1814, finally, secret councils were reintroduced in both Bern and Fribourg. In adapted forms, secret councils thus survived the revolution and continued to influence politics in the following decades. Political secrecy stayed relevant throughout the Age of Revolutions, and maybe keeps being so up until today. These findings, therefore, demonstrate once again that despite being a period of upheaval, the late 18th and early 19th centuries were also characterized by significant continuities. Thank you for your attention.